Today we have Zach Kurtzhals. He is the president of HighTech Archery. I am so excited to have you on the program today, Zach. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here, Daniel.
You know, we've known the Hoyt family for many, many years, and I actually was going to save this question for later, but there is a relationship between Hoyt and Easton that goes back quite a long time, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. Easton's Easton's a sister company of ours, so we're both owned by Jazz D. Easton, which is Greg Easton today.
Yep.
And he is so each company is owned independently. So we're sisters under more of a corporate umbrella, but privately held. So we're not private equity, we're not venture capitalists. We're owned by one person,
Which is really cool. I mean, it's been something that I got to see it. I was out there a few years ago visiting with the folks at Easton, and we got to tour your plant. And I'm like, I didn't realize it was this one big community. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Easton's about a block to our west in a different building than us, but yeah, we're really close. I mean, we don't do business together per se, but we share a lot of experiences, and the teams a lot of times collaborate on problems. I mean, COVID would have been a really good example of, like, inventories were a nightmare, and so we had our supply chain team and their supply chain team meeting multiple times a week to just problem solve, figure out how to get stuff. And so having that extra horsepower across the street, having good relationships with them is something that's helpful for sure.
Cool American success stories on both ends. We are here today to talk about, I've got two main topics. We're talking about HighTech Archery and better bow hunting. And I'm going to start with HighTech Archery because Zach, if you aren't familiar with his work, you started off in the engineering end of things about 21 years ago. Yep. And what I've admired looking at your background is you basically worked your way all the way up that company to the very top.
Yeah, I started here in 2003 as a product engineer. Came out of college a little bit later than most people. I took a crack at earning my living with elbow grease. I hauled heavy equipment for about 5 years, trucking, and decided that my body wasn't built for that. So I have a lot of respect for that, for just construction and the heavy equipment side of the world. But when I got into engineering, I was a manufacturing engineer student, and I hadn't fallen in love with archery yet. That came a little bit further into my schooling when I met my now wife, whose father actually owned an archery shop, and so that's kind of where I cut my teeth. I was probably 21 or 22 years old before I ever shot a bow and arrow. Did a lot of bird hunting and whatnot when I was younger, but didn't get into the bow game until a little bit later in life. So yeah, started as a product engineer here, and I have a hard time thinking backwards from a dates standpoint and what exactly those dates were, but yeah, I moved through a lot of different layers from even a product line manager on the accessory side into like an assistant manager of the product engineering team, into the product engineering, and then I got into a director role over all of engineering, which includes the manufacturing side and the product side, and then just continued to work my way through. And I mean, I have to give a lot of thanks and credit to Randy Walk, who was the previous president. I mean, he's the one that saw my potential and gave me those opportunities. And so every time I got a new opportunity, I just try to take advantage of it. And that put me in a good place to make a run at this chair when Randy retired. It's been 3 years now. So
wow, it's been 3 years already. We know Randy's fingerprints are all over that company. And what I find fascinating is, I will interject, we have had similar backgrounds. My dad was in construction, and I didn't think I was going to go to college, and that I wasn't cut out for that. And I said, I'm going to try to go to college and become a writer of some sort. Well, fast forward 30 years later, here we are. But talking about Randy and Hoyt, when you think of that company and the legacy, I remember Hoyt was the bow back when I was in high school. That would have been in the early 80s. Um, Most of those people were shooting Hoyts, especially the guys that were, and I know we're going to get into this, but you shot tournament archery. Some people that were really into archery, not necessarily bow hunting, but the advancements in technology over the past 30 plus years have been pretty significant. And what I've noticed just watching on the sidelines over the years is you guys have made your name basically on some of that cutting edge stuff. Am I not correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct for sure. You know, you're only as good as the newest thing that you bring out, right? And the biggest goal for us is to let's obsolete our own products with the new products. And in this archery market, there's so much expectation around every year, every year, every year, which is a lot of pressure on every bow manufacturer, not just Hoyt. But when you really look at what the end consumer, like, how do they make their purchasing decisions? And over the years, that has changed. For a long time, performance was it, right? It was like, we're going to go faster. I mean, when I started at Hoyt in 2003, I think our number one bow, like our premier model hunting bow, was an X-Tech. I think it went 306 feet per second in 2003. So, you know, back then it was like, holy cow. And then it was a bit of an arms race, I would say, between us and the other companies of like, you know, going faster, go a little bit faster, go a little bit faster. In 2003, Hoyt had a Super Tech that had the original spiral cam on it. It went 330 feet per second, but man, people hated it because it was really rough and harsh and the draw curve and all those things. But over the years, we just stored a little bit of energy at a time, and this is across the industry. And get a couple feet a second faster every single year, and pretty soon, you know, those harsh cams at 330 are now storing enough energy and they're more efficient and they're running 340. And, you know, then we start bumping up against some practical limits when it comes to overall performance. But yeah, I think those were some of the easy jumps. Some of the other stuff, as consumers have changed their mindset or what's really important to them, there's about 6 attributes that a consumer can buy, that a consumer can judge or compare subjectively. It's everything from cosmetics, do I like the look of it, to mass weight, how does the bow draw, what's the noise, how's the vibration. We talk a lot about, like, today, when a consumer that is interested in trying many bows, they're trying those bows at 6 feet, right? They're making a purchasing decision at 6 feet, which is interesting, but it's the way that they break down their subjectivity, their ability to make a decision based on what the results of their experience are. And so today, the most important things, I would argue, are draw force curve, noise, and vibration. And I would say that and I don't know what order, it would depend on the person, but ultimately when you get to, like, speed is sort of this constant now, where it used to go up 2 or 3 feet a second. Now it's like everybody's kind of like 340, 342, 343. It's just, okay, you got to be here, but that's no longer a purchasing driver, because if you're not here, you're not in the game.
Right.
And so so then it really drives to the other things, which is, you know, noise, vibration, and draw force curve.
And that what leads up to the next question is, I know you guys, well, first of all, let me back up. What would you, and I know you mentioned a lot of things there, but what would you say, I said 2 or 3, but what are the 2 biggest advancements in technology, say, over the past 5 years?
Over the past 5 years?
Yeah.
I think everything got real tight over the last 5 years from a parity standpoint. I'm not sure massive advancements. If you said big advancements, I would almost say, changed the industry. I would say that the ability of these engineering teams, whether it's us or our competitors, to basically harness that energy and reduce that overall that shock, that feel, that noise, like, that's no easy feat, but there's an expectation from the consumer base, and I don't blame them, about what it should sound like and what it should feel like, and it should feel like nothing and sound like less.
Mm-hmm.
So, in those spaces, It's kind of a tough question to answer because I think if you went back 10 years, doesn't
Right.
even get us all the way back to the first carbon bow.
Yep.
Like the carbon matrix came out in like 2010.
Yep.
That was probably the biggest advancement, and that's just a material change in a handle. We've made some big jumps when it comes to, our cam systems. So have our competitors, I think. But ultimately, it's about how you store the energy and the efficiency you get out of it, because that's in the background, in the back rooms, in the engineering and the test labs. That's where we're running that stuff, and that just results in what the end consumer gets, right? That's the speed that they get, that's the feel that they get, all of those types of things. And so I think there's been some small advancements, whether it's the pick rail system, whether it's some of our, I think more today than ever, we're looking at it as a full system. It's not just a bow anymore. You don't buy that bow and then somebody else's this quiver and somebody. Now it's like, well, you want the integrated system.
Yep.
Because that's how we're looking at it. That's how our competitors are looking at it. Because now that quiver, that stabilizer, that's designed for this. That's the best way you can build it is with our factory stuff. But that's not. I mean, that doesn't really answer your question, like from a significance factor of.
Well,
Of
that's
real.
kind of what I was getting at because if I said 20 years, that'd be kind of easy for you to
Yeah.
say like, well, obviously, and like you mentioned, when you guys, and I say you guys, the entire industry, when you hit 300 feet per second, it's like, holy cow, this is something else. But now, the way I look at it, and I'm always taking it from the aspect of a whitetail bow hunter, obviously, because of our brand. But
Sure.
most guys are going to replace their bow probably every 5 years. And they always ask me, like, well, which one should I get? I'm like, if you're not really like brushed up on the nuance, you're probably not going to notice a lot of differences. You'll see some cool things, and when you, the coolest thing would be, like you said, the integrated aspects of all this, because before it was like you were taking a Corvette and buying tires from Fleet Farm and putting stuff on this car, and it's the same thing with a bow. But now it's like, oh, this is pretty slick, this is sleek. But what really is the difference? Well, those efficiencies are built within the system, and that's kind of where I was going with that. But you did mention when the carbon riser came out, and this I'm not 100% sure. I think Hoyt brought that to market, right?
There had been two previous attempts, one by High Country, one by PSE. Don't remember exactly
That's
what
right.
the dates were, but they didn't really come at super high success levels.
I remember High Country now that you mention it.
Which actually made it that much more difficult for us because it had been done, but it wasn't really well accepted. So we knew we were going to have the pessimists out there, right? So coming to market, how do we make sure we do it right? Because we felt like if it's done a third time and it's not done right, then this market may never accept it. And so it was a big project. I mean, we were in development on that for better than 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Before we ever got to market with one.
So what did the carbon riser do for the archery industry, the one that Hoyt came out with and perfected?
I mean, it just gives you a different structure, right? I mean, we call them risers, people call them handles. What did it do? It gives us a dissimilar material. At the time, it really helped us with a softness of the shot and how it felt. It allowed us to engineer different pieces of the riser so that we could sort of predict or direct how we wanted it to react. When you're talking about aluminum, you have an aluminum handle, you're stuck with singular properties, right? Like you can't change the direction of the fiber orientation in aluminum the way you can in carbon. And so carbon allowed us to really engineer specific areas of the handle differently across the board. Now, what does that mean to the end consumer, to the layman? Just it means we were able to give you a better option, and how that impacted you, not sure the end consumer could actually tell, but what we were trying to develop and what we were trying to deliver, and which we felt like we did, was a better end experience to the consumer, whether that's tunability, feel, look, so on.
What has been the over those years, which is I think like almost 20, what has been the break? I mean, do you sell equal percentages of bows to the target market and the hunting market, or is it different than that?
Uh, I'm not going to answer that
Okay,
one.
that's fair. That's fair enough. Um,
I,
and the
I
other,
will say this. I will say this. Uh, the bow hunting market is a significantly bigger piece of the business
and that's
across
what I assumed.
the
Yeah,
industry.
that's what I assumed. Um,
Yeah.
with with that technology, I did notice that retail prices of bows went up, and most people said, "Yeah, I would love to own a Hoyt or an XYZ other bow company's bow." However, they're just way too expensive. Well, yes, there are some expensive bows out there. However, if I had to go look today, I wrote this down actually. You can pick up a Turex for $7.99, and that's a only a 3.8 pound bow. I always
Yeah.
told people, I said, if you like that technology, whether it's a bow or a crossbow or even a gun, I said, eventually that technology is going to come down in price. So I guess the question here is, you're reaching all ends of the spectrum now. You're not just catering to, you know, an affluent archer.
Um, Ask me the question again. I'm not sure I caught it.
I'm saying, like, when a lot of people that I would talk to say, well, Hoyt they're great bows, but they're way too expensive. I could have never afford one. However,
Right.
you have an offering in just about every category, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to have a mid price. We call it the mid price offering. The Torex fits that category. The question becomes, who is that archer? Is that always a new archer? Is that a more, we'll call it, fiscally conscious archer in that space? Those bows get sold as packages. I think that $7.99 is actually a package price, but I'm not positive off the top of my head. It could be that could be a bow only. But yeah, we do. I mean, we have offerings from even, well, that's probably our lowest price point. That's for every archer, up into that high almost 2,000 range in
2000,
some
yeah.
of our some of our target bows, and even our ultra level carbon bows. And so, yeah, I think it just depends on what that person's looking for. And I think a lot of times at the mid price, it comes down to, sometimes it comes down to the dealer. What are they comfortable with? What do they want to sell in that price point? We hope they choose to sell the Hoyt in that price point, but there's a lot of competition at the low end and at the mid price.
Tons of
And they're pretty
competition.
good bows. I mean, I think it goes that way in every single consumer category,
Yep.
right? When people ask me, well, why would I shoot a carbon bow over a Torex bow? And it's like, well, I don't know. Why would you buy a custom rifle in 6.5 PRC versus the one that Ruger sells on the rack at,
Yep.
Shields or
Yep.
Sportsman's Warehouse? So it just comes down to, what do you tailor yourself to go purchase? I mean, we have the offerings at the super high end. We feel like those bows are the ultimate of the ultimate. They get every single thing that our engineering team can put in play to make it a better experience, to give better accuracy, and so on and so forth. So that's a tough one. And I would actually, you said something, the longer stuff's around, the less expensive it gets. Well, not in these unprecedented times when it comes to
That's
like
true. That's
the
true.
inflation that our country has seen over the last few years, last 5 years. But just in general, products don't get less expensive to make unless you get into like significant volume levels, and this market doesn't have those types of volume levels. And so, our price is one of the toughest pieces for us, part of because of where we live. We're in Salt Lake City, which 15 years ago, Salt Lake City was a real affordable place to live, and now it's
It's
not.
it's a very nice place to live, but a very
Yeah.
expensive place to live.
So those expenses, raw materials are up, labor's up, everything's up, and so as those costs go up, so do the products. And I would, when I compare us to other consumer goods, whether it be rifles or mountain bikes, you got a $7,000 aluminum mountain bike or a $15,000 carbon one, and those are pretty significant numbers. And I'm not ignorant to the fact, like, it costs a lot of money to play this game, um, but it's also gotten bigger over the years. 20 years ago, we bought our camo not from
No, we bought
companies
it at the
online
surplus
to
store.
you,
Yeah, yeah,
and Sitco. We may have bought Realtree, but we could have got it at Walmart, and so it was a lot less expensive. And I think all of those things have gotten better, but it asks for more money out of the archer's pocket, whether it's ozonics or Kuiu, or I got to buy a lease, or there's just a lot of pressure on the bow hunter, especially the whitetail bow hunter, because out west we got a lot of public lands, and that's not always the case in the whitetail world.
yeah. That is the truth. I want to talk a little bit more about technology before I switch to the next topic. Um, you were talking about some of the improvements. A couple of things I had written down that I thought were interesting. The exact cam. What is the? I know what it is, but explain for the listeners what is the exact cam. How does it work, and how is it beneficial for an archer?
Specifically, the exact cam is it's a hybrid cam system. It's built on the binary platform. What is the benefit? It has a ton of adjustment opportunity, right? So 1/4 inch draw length adjustments, you have a ton of let off opportunities. And I think over the years, it gets to like, how customizable is it? And really it's the platform today. So today we have the Alpha X and the RX8, and those two platforms use the exact cam. And what we were trying to build in there was the reality of like, not one size fits everybody. And that's always been kind of our game, right? We always said, okay, well, we want a short aluminum, we want a long aluminum. We want a short carbon, we want a long carbon, because not only do we cater to, the guy who hunts in a tree stand, we cater to the guy who hunts in the mountains. And we believe that some of those platforms are better represented in those areas. But it also depends on the size of the archer and the draw length and those types of things. But ultimately the exact cam was built on adjustability, efficiency, and performance. And so giving the end consumer, or giving the dealer, the ability to fit that consumer into as much as 1/4 inch increments was a pretty big deal. So we had never gone down that path before. And then the adjustable let off has a pretty significant impact. I think everybody over the years, let off was one of those things that got new. It's been a long time now, but when let off hit to the 85% level, everybody's like, ooh, I gotta have that. But I don't think everybody really understood the trade-offs, right? When you're letting off that much, your string tension goes down that much, you have to be that much more perfect as a shooter, because there's less room for error when you've got all of this loss of tension in the string. And so just some of that type of stuff, I think people go, oh, I really like the idea because I can hold it back and I can relax. If I get caught by a deer or something, I can sort of hold on to it. But it sort of drives us down that path of like, you make the choice, and we're going to put it in here so that you can experiment with it, and then you just decide what you want, instead of us going like 75 or 80 or 80 or 85. Take a shot.
Adjust it to what you want.
Decide what you want. Yeah.
Which is really cool. And I would add that that's where you really need to support your archery shop guy, because those are the guys that will really tune you in. If you really want to improve I've seen so many guys go from decent accuracy to, oh my gosh, because they didn't realize, like, I'm just not a 29-inch draw. No, it could be a half-inch either way. And that makes a big difference. And the other difference is on the draw weight. I could talk all day long about, I always thought I had to shoot 70 because that's what that bow came at, And once I started bringing it down as I got older, I got more accurate. And it's like, I don't care anymore that I'm not, the strong guy I was used to be in doing that. The other the other things I noticed were the integrated designs. We talked about that, but it's all the way down to the silencers. Everything is built for that specific model of bow, like you said. And then the other one would be the grips. And can you talk about that a little bit? I know you did with the carbon designs, but like the Vital Point grip, how is that different than your competitors, and how does it help the shooting experience?
I'm not sure I can completely talk to my competitors, right? I don't have a ton of experience behind their bows, and I don't necessarily know their theory behind their grips. But what I can tell you about the Vital Point grip is somewhere between the target guy or target girl. Somebody shooting target bows wants that narrow grip because they feel like it creates a narrow location for them to place their hand, which reduces inconsistencies, right? It's that consistent placement of your hand. And so when you get to hunting grips, it depends on who you ask. From our perspective, we wanted to be somewhere between where a target bow is, which is basically what our grips look like when you take our hunting bows when you pull the grip off. It's pretty narrow, and there's not a lot of room for error. You got to be really focused on there. The idea behind the Vital Point was make the grip put the person in the right position. When they slide their hand up in there, make that grip give them as much benefit as possible so that they don't have to worry as much about thinking about putting their hand in that bow the same every single time, because it's the first point of contact. It's the very first thing you do, whether you think about it or not. When you put your hand in that grip, if you don't do it the same every time, it's the first thing that you did different, and it's the first thing that could impact that shot down range. And so our goal with the Vital Point was to sort of, go from my hand to, I'm 6'1", 200, and we've got guys that are 5'5", $140, smaller hands, smaller people. Make sure that this fits everybody as well as it can possibly fit them. And then ultimately it's just about repetitive and accuracy, and then comfort. I mean, those were the goals of the Vital Point, is make it easier to shoot great.
Biggest factors when it comes to shooting and bow hunting. Let's talk briefly on your recurves. I know you're still making them.
Yeah.
Is there still a ton of recurve shooters out there, or is
there's a lot of recurve shooters in the world. The majority of them are not domestic. There's a pretty small faction of target. So there's two ways to look at recurve, right? You have Olympic recurve, which that's target, and then you have traditional, and we have both of those. Olympic's definitely bigger than traditional from our standpoint, but traditional is a pretty big category, and there's and I don't blame guys, so I don't want this to come off the wrong way. Like, there's a lot of traditional guys who think in traditional it's a wood bow with wood arrows, and I think that's awesome. So traditional can be an aluminum bow that we make, or it can be a wood bow that some small private boyer makes, right? And so that becomes a pretty big category, and then it really just depends on what that end consumer wants. We try to offer something there. We have a really awesome offering there in our Satori lineup. When you get to the Olympic side of things, the huge majority of that is foreign, and that's everything from Asia to Europe to you name it.
Wow.
It's bigger in Europe than compound.
Wow. I guess I should have known that, but it's something, when you think of something as global like that, it really makes us feel kind of small in what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with too, like, we take for granted the fact that bow hunting is something that we get to do here. A lot of those countries foreign, they don't. Right. There is no bow hunting. That's not an option. In fact, there's very few countries overseas that actually do allow it. And so when you get into that, now you start looking at, well, what are those countries focused on? Well, they're focused on Olympic medals sometimes. And so then it becomes an Olympic recurve versus compound. There's still a really big target faction overseas. We sell a ton of target bows overseas, whether it's compound or recurve, but the lion's share of recurve is sold overseas.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Mossberg. Mossberg has been supplying American hunters with quality firearms for over 100 years. Over the years, they've upheld their commitment to innovation by creating a handful of firearms that have shaped the way we hunt today. For more information, visit mossberg.com. So when you said you didn't take up archery at all until later, or was it just bow hunting?
No, I didn't shoot a bow until I was in my 20s.
That's crazy. And you shot tournament archery, didn't you?
Yeah.
So were you some sort of super athlete going into that, or how did you pick that up so good?
To be honest, archery came very easy to me.
Wow.
But I also had it. I also had an environment to learn in that was really beneficial. I mean, my at the time my girlfriend's dad owned an archery shop, so I mean I had access to everything when it comes to like just asking questions, you know.
Wow.
And then so that was in uh, in the 90s. We're talking Northern California. So I'm originally from northeastern Nebraska, but when I was young, my mom moved me out to Northern California, which is Chico was the town that I grew up
Oh,
in. And
okay.
there's actually a really good target archery,
It's a home
um,
of Aaron Rodgers.
the home of Aaron Rodgers. That's right.
That's the way I
He
know it.
went to the other high school. He didn't go to the one I went to. He went to the one that my wife goes to. Went to. Um, but uh, but yeah, there's a pretty good tournament archery scene in that Northern California area, and some really high end shooters. And so, you know, it's a small group, it's a small community, just like it is everywhere, and everybody's really helpful. And I think part of it was it came very easy to me, but the other part of it was, man, I had at my fingertips great information, great coaching, yeah, and then I loved it. And it's easy to love stuff when you're decent at it, I
That's
suppose.
pretty awesome. You give me all the training in the world. I don't know if I'd be shooting tournament archery. So when was your first experience with hunting?
2000 probably.
My goodness. Wow.
Yeah, maybe right in there. 98, 99, 2000, somewhere in there.
What was that? What was your first taste?
Mule deer in, I'm trying to remember the unit in Northern California. I think it was A2, which was up by between Lake Almanor and Susanville in Northern California there. Yeah.
Did you get one?
Killed, yeah, I killed a pretty nice 3x2 on the opening morning. It was a pretty good buck. It was a really good buck for the first one I
Well,
ever shot.
yeah, but you shot one in California. How many people can say that? Not too many.
Yeah, I've got a few of them there.
That is pretty awesome. So flash forward till today. What's your favorite bow hunt? If you could take one bow hunt a year, what would it be?
Elk.
Elk. Yeah, I should figure that. Utah, especially Utah, really nice elk. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. The work is significant. You know, it takes a lot out of you, but man, the reward is just unbelievable. And it takes a long time to get even decent at elk hunting, right? There's just so, I mean, so last year I finally drew my archery tag in Utah for a trophy bull unit, and I think I had 19 bonus points.
wow.
And so, you know, I waited 19 years to draw that tag. And when I drew it, I took it very seriously. I got myself in the best shape of my life. And you know, even with that, I think I killed my bull probably like my 15th day of hunting
Holy cow.
in a absolute one of the best units in the state. And I think I hiked, well, I know I did. We averaged over 12 miles a day.
Was that 15 consecutive days?
No, I hunted about 8 or 9 days, and then I came home I had to come back to the office for about 3 or 4 days, and then the back half was scheduled for the duration.
Wow.
And I think I killed my bull on the 13th of September, and the unit closed on the 17th or the 19th, somewhere in there.
Right down to the
So,
wire.
oh yeah, yeah. But that's the thing I love about elk hunting is like, you know, getting a bull. Harvesting the animal is always the cherry on top, right? I mean, but the more effort, the more work that you have to put into something. Um, for me, by the time I got to that point, like people were asking me, like, "Aren't you nervous? Aren't you worried?" And it's like, man, this is about the experience was so over the top. It was so incredible. I couldn't have done anything more. Like we literally did everything we could do every single day, hiking 12 to 15 miles a day. Um, I was at peace with the idea, like if I don't get one, it's not because we didn't try, it's because bow hunting's hard, and bow hunting trophy bulls is about as hard as it gets. When you look at success rates on some of those units, even the best units in the state, like the idea that somebody's going to kill something better than a 350 bull is like 2%.
My goodness.
and the success rates on just bulls is like 20
Yeah.
with a bow, 20 to maybe 30. So I killed a 370 bull on my 15th or so day, and but I had some encounters. You know, I passed up a pretty dang good bull at probably 55 yards, and just he wasn't the one. And I had another encounter with a giant, was probably over 400, that he presented himself, and it was kind of funky, and the wind was really, really ripping, and I just decided, nah, he deserves better than I can give him right now. And it was like, it was going to be about a mid 60s yard shot, and there was too much wind, and I just didn't like the conditions, so I let him walk. And he was a monster.
That
But
is pretty
you know,
awesome.
that's elk hunting, and that's probably, and then just the calling, right? Being in there, like big mule deer are super hard to hunt. Big elk are super fun to hunt. They're not easy, but hearing the call in, being in the middle of that, waking up in the middle of the night and hearing bulls screaming, it's just the next level.
That is outstanding. Some of the best hunts I've ever had were deer hunting. Obviously, last year was in Utah, and the other time was in Oregon, and it was like you said, just the walking, lots of miles. You have to be in really good shape to do that. And but then at the end of the hunt, yes, we got one, but just the satisfaction that comes with that. And hats off to you, passing up. It's hard for a guy to do. You have a trophy animal standing there. It's like, I'm going to still try to make that shot. I think after a while you get it into your brain that this is about the experience, not so much. Yeah, you want, like I said, you want to get one, but just coming home with the memories. That is pretty awesome. I'm gonna have to wrap this down to one more question for you, Zach. I wish I could talk for more, but let's see here. I've got about 10 questions to pick from. You answered that one. Here's a good one. How has social media, in your mind, affected how non-hunters view bow hunting specifically, positive or negatively?
That's a tough question to answer, only because I can really only give you my perspective on that.
That's what we want.
It's hard. I can't give you the perspective through somebody else's eyes, but I can tell you this. I mean, I follow social media. I follow Hoyt owners groups, just because I'm always curious, like what's going on out there. And some of the things, it comes down to like, what do I like? What am I willing to accept in some of those things? And so it's like kill photos, right? Bow hunters, we love them. Like, I want to see you guys were successful. What'd you get? Tell me about it. Those types of things. And there are people who are not necessarily hunters that are interested in that. But there are also people who are not hunters who are vehemently against that. And so I think it brings it to the forefront. Like, if I'm going to give you a general sort of answer, that the reality is that social media makes it way more accessible for people who've never been a part of it. And that can be good, and that can be bad. I think people that are curious about bow hunting, or just curious about hunting, are less negatively impacted than people who may have already made up their mind. But I think that's probably true of just about any subject matter, right? If you go into it with an open mind, being curious about things, you may be less likely to be turned off by it, so to speak. So I like social media. I think it has it has a really good ability to spread the word, to really open up bow hunting for us in general to a bigger group of people in the world. I'd like to think that makes people want to try it more, that have never been impacted by it. And I think people like, for us, Cameron Haynes, John Dudley, those guys do a good job of talking. Joe Rogan, they do a great job of talking about the natural food and the idea of hunting and killing your own food and those types of things. And I think that expansion of bow hunting to a bigger group of people in the public it's definitely good for it. So yeah, I think it just depends on, it's the eye of the beholder, but more information, more availability of information today. Today, I mean, bow hunting's hard, right? Bow hunting are hard, target archery's hard. So getting into it is expensive, but man, there's a lot of information available. You can get on YouTube, you can go to your local dealer, your local retailer. There's a lot of help out there for people that want to give it a try. And I think it's more accessible today because of social media than it's ever been.
Perfect. Okay, I got to lob one more grenade at you here. Crossbows. Why don't we see Hoyt in the crossbow game, and do you think Hoyt will ever be in the crossbow game?
Yeah, the first question, why don't you see us in the crossbow game? I would say it just hasn't been right for us yet. The reality, if you just look across history, right? If you go, I mean, we went from muzzle loaders to rifles, center fire rifles. When you look at just weapons in general, it's hard to keep people pushed back when it comes to like technological advancements. Now, I think bow hunting, vertical bows, I think there's an art to that. I think it's more difficult. I would sure like to see that maintain its popularity across many years, but it's hard. Crossbows are a lot easier, right? So now it's more like a rifle thing, but I think if it just really depends on how crossbows continues to advance, because the things about crossbows that really concern me are you start to lose the recreational piece of archery. I mean, people don't shoot crossbows recreationally. They shoot them to hunt with. So, what is that going to do to the dealer? I think dealers do pretty well with crossbows because they have to fix them a lot. I mean, they blow up a lot, and that's not necessarily because of the companies that build them. That could also be the end user. But it's a simpler weapon to use. I wouldn't say that it's more accurate, but in a novice's hands, it's certainly more accurate than a vertical bow. So I think when you look at it, just really depends on how much it continues to infiltrate the market. I mean, we're in the majority of the states. The only states that really aren't left for having crossbows legal in archery season is kind of out west. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Wasatch Mountains in Salt Lake City, but I'm not sure I want to carry a crossbow up those things.
I wouldn't. No.
But I digress. The reality is it's an advancement in weaponry. You really have to decide if you think it's archery or you think it's something else. What I would really like to see is separate seasons for crossbow specific seasons, vertical bow specific seasons. And there's a lot of political stuff around that, and it comes down to like, well, who gets the best dates? I don't want to get into that because you and me aren't going to solve those discussions today. But I think that would be better all in all, because my biggest fear is that when somebody buys into a crossbow, if they stop buying bows, now they're just a crossbow person. They're not recreationally hunting. Now we start to see it, or recreationally shooting. We start to see a decline in target archery. We start to see the decline in leagues. And those are all revenue generators for our retailers.
Yep.
And that's my concern there. I don't hate crossbows. Truth be told, I think I would be a fool to tell you that we'll never get into them. It's something we look at, and if the time is right for us, I could see us going down that path in the future.
Very cool. Well, fair enough. Well, Zach, thank you so much for joining us today. We very much appreciate it. You guys know where Hoyt is, but to check out Hoyt, where can they go, Zach?
Check out Hoyt, Hoyt.com. That's our website. Everything you need to look at our products and see who we are is on that page. So
and you can always go to your pro shop and shoot one and see if you like it. I think you're going to like any bow that you put in your hand and shoot it. And as Zach said, just get out there and shoot. Whether you're hunting or just shooting in your backyard or the local 3D course, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, or I mean, even the Total Archery Challenge stuff, like, holy cow, has that had a massive impact on the bow hunting communities, and gives you a great opportunity to get out there and try it and you're basically in hunting scenarios that you're shooting at rubber deer.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Zach. We very much appreciate having you on. For Zach Kurtzhals, I am Dan Schmidt. Thank you for joining us for Deer Talk Now. The only thing we ask you to do is like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, or if you're watching it on our YouTube page, which is YouTube.com/DDH Online, or Facebook Twitter, Instagram, X, I think they call Twitter now. Anyways, for Zach, I'm Dan. We'll catch you next Thursday for another episode of Deer Talk Now.